In this insightful conversation, Jefferson Fisher, a board-certified trial lawyer and communication expert, delves into the intricacies of mastering difficult conversations, understanding gaslighting and narcissism, and navigating emotional dynamics within relationships and professional environments. Through real-life examples and practical advice, Fisher explores how authenticity, presence, conflict resolution, and emotional awareness shape our interactions and long-term connections. The discussion also touches on the importance of managing distractions, knowing when to stand your ground, and creating meaningful connections even amidst conflict. Fisher underscores authenticity as the cornerstone of powerful communication. Presence is described as the highest form of authenticity, being genuinely engaged and fully attentive during interactions. Authenticity builds trust over time, and even on our worst days, showing up as our true selves encourages deeper connections. The conversation highlights how superficial niceties, such as insincere compliments or excessive enthusiasm early in relationships, often signal insecurity rather than real interest. Genuine presence, in contrast, requires reducing distractions like phones and fully anchoring oneself in the moment. Fisher illustrates this concept with viral examples of public figures who falter in presence during intimate encounters, emphasizing that people remember how they were made to feel more than what was said. The dialogue makes a strong case for eliminating distractions, especially technology, that weaken the connection between people. Fisher shares a physical metaphor using a taut string to represent the emotional connection in conversation. The moment attention drifts, such as grabbing a phone, the string slackens, symbolizing diminished connection and respect. This disconnection often leads to emotional distancing and misunderstandings. The guest emphasizes how rare it is for people to leave their phones aside to focus solely on one another, especially in social or romantic settings. Fisher encourages setting firm boundaries around phone use, such as leaving devices out of specific settings, to foster stronger, distraction-free engagement. He warns that distracted interactions feel disrespectful and hinder authentic communication. Jefferson Fisher highlights how over-explaining dilutes communication and signals insecurity or lack of confidence in one's message. People often fill silences with unnecessary words, undermining their credibility and overwhelming listeners. Instead, he recommends being concise, a well of information that others can draw from as needed, rather than a waterfall of nonstop talk. Confident communicators take pauses and think before responding, which piques interest and conveys authority. Fisher points out that taking a moment to breathe and consider responses or admitting uncertainty when appropriate supports rapport and trust because it reflects self-awareness rather than a need to dominate the conversation. Knowing how to effectively support others during times of sadness or grief is a critical communication skill Fisher emphasizes. He warns against using phrases like, "let me know if you need anything," as this unintentionally burdens the grieving person by placing the onus on them to reach out. Instead, he advocates proactively offering specific help, bringing food, running errands, or simply showing up without waiting for requests. Additionally, validating emotions with empathy and acknowledgement of the pain, rather than minimizing it with cliches or platitudes, strengthens relationships. Fisher stresses that being present with someone's sadness authentically requires affirming that what they feel is appropriate and providing tangible support without expecting reciprocation. Gaslighting is outlined as a form of psychological manipulation aimed at distorting one's reality to gain control. Fisher differentiates gaslighting from simple lying by highlighting its intent to alter perceptions of truth, memory, or sanity. It can be both intentional and unintentional, often stemming from self-preservation. Victims most susceptible to gaslighting typically have anxious attachment styles, relying heavily on others for emotional regulation, and women are more frequently reported as victims, particularly in workplace and medical contexts. To counter gaslighting, Fisher suggests slowing down conversations, firmly stating one's own reality, "I remember that differently," and refusing to be drawn into confusion or self-doubt. Recognizing the intention behind gaslighting and maintaining steady self-trust are key defenses. Fisher explains that many individuals exhibit narcissistic traits, but full-blown narcissistic personality disorder is marked by a lack of empathy, an insatiable need for admiration, and a victim mentality that demands attention. Narcissists often alternate between seeking praise and provoking conflict to maintain control. People exhibiting these traits tend to monopolize conversations, are unable to be genuinely happy for others, and carefully curate their outward image while hiding dysfunction privately. The recommended approach is to limit exposure, keep interactions neutral, noted, thanks for sharing, avoid emotional reactions, and refuse to chase holes in conversations they try to dig. By not engaging or giving them emotional fuel, one effectively neutralizes their manipulative tactics. A defining feature of masterful communicators lies in their emotional regulation and ability to stay composed, especially under pressure. Fisher draws parallels to courtroom dynamics where attorneys convey confidence by controlling tone, pace, and body language, signaling authority with calmness rather than outbursts. Responding first with frustration or emotion leads to a loss of credibility and control. Instead, matching rhythm, speaking deliberately, and acting as if "I've been here before" anchor conversations and calm others. He offers practical advice like taking intentional pauses, asking for resets during difficult talks, and validating the emotions behind the communication instead of escalating conflict. Fisher tackles a common misconception that conflict ruins relationships, suggesting instead that relationships deteriorate when conflict goes unaddressed or improperly handled. He cites studies showing that how partners manage conflict is a significant predictor of long-term relationship health, not whether they stay married or divorced. Repair is central. Hundreds of small moments where apologies and validations are withheld accumulate into relationship fractures. Validating feelings, asking for timeouts, and slicing issues into manageable conversations improve resolution. He encourages embracing conflict as a tool for growth, highlighting that couples who learn to have difficult but constructive conversations strengthen their bond over time. The dialogue acknowledges natural differences in emotional expression between men and women, linking these to socialization and attachment styles. Men tend to self-regulate emotions by seeking solitude, whereas many women co-regulate emotions, needing connection and reassurance from others. This divergence often results in miscommunication and frustration, especially in romantic relationships where partners feel out of sync. Fisher encourages men to express emotion more openly and validate their partner's feelings, emphasizing that emotional presence nurtures connection. Likewise, he suggests women recognize that men may process emotions differently, and both parties benefit from meeting in the middle with empathy and patience. Standing one's ground without damaging a relationship is presented as a delicate but necessary balance. Fisher points out many men suffer from a caged feeling due to unresolved autonomy issues and a fear of conceding personal freedoms. He advocates clearly identifying one's priorities and boundaries and recognizing when concessions compromise long-term well-being. Validating a partner's feelings does not require forfeiting one's own truth or agency. Maintaining hobbies, social connections, and personal space nourishes individuals and relationships alike. Establishing non-negotiables protects the relationship's priority while allowing room for compromise and growth. The distinction between nice and kind highlights the depth of authentic communication. Niceness is described as superficial and often motivated by a desire to avoid conflict or displeasing others, which can lead to people-pleasing and dishonesty. Kindness, on the other hand, is rooted in genuine care and connection, reflected in the courage to speak the truth compassionately, even when it's difficult. Fisher encourages aspiring communicators to prioritize kindness over niceness to foster trust and meaningful relationships. Jefferson Fisher shares practical techniques for handling insults, dismissive comments, and belittlement. Silence for 5 to 7 seconds after a hurtful remark creates discomfort and causes the aggressor to reflect on their words. Requesting repetition, "I need you to say that again," and questioning intent, "Did you mean to sound rude?" disrupt negative cycles and often lead the other person to soften or clarify. This approach detaches the listener's emotional response from the aggressor's attempt to provoke, thereby maintaining control of the interaction. Fisher emphasizes that responding with curiosity and calm inquiry diffuses hostility and promotes healthier dialogue. Finally, Fisher frames effective communication as a learnable skill rather than an innate talent, requiring consistent investment and discipline akin to physical health or professional development. He notes that most people are poorly equipped to handle conflict and emotional complexity, which often brings distress in work and relationship contexts. Through training, mindfulness, practice, and openness to growth, individuals can become confident navigators of difficult conversations, enabling better outcomes personally and professionally. Fisher is developing AI tools to help people practice real-life scenarios, reinforcing communication mastery in challenging situations. The podcast also touches on how interpersonal communication extends beyond individual relationships to influence generational patterns, workplace culture, and social environments. Fisher highlights that children's well-being correlates more with parental conflict management than marital status, and that our ways of speaking shape broader cycles of interaction. Small moments of kindness or cruelty echo far beyond the immediate context, underscoring the ripple effect of how we treat others. He stresses the value of humility, presence, and small, authentic gestures, noting that often these invisible PR moments define us more than grand statements or actions.